Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends and family, and everybody else, it's a great pleasure to be with you today on the second episode of Season 5 of Real Talk with Billy and Cory, live from our homes at Zoom University. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Hot Take Billy Parvatam on hand, joined by my podcast partner, Uncle Cornelius Michael. Some people call him Cory Van Dyke. Cory, it's great to be back with you for number 2 of Season 5.
Yeah, and it's great to be back and being able to talk about live sports that were going on. The start of the MLB season, obviously. I know me and you were tuned in on opening day and throughout the weekend and looking forward to, hopefully, baseball to be played continuing on in this future.
Yeah, both the Nats and Giants have one win after 3-4 games, so
Hey,
great job.
Don't sell us short.
It might be a rare win for the Giants. Honestly, the Nats are going to have a tough season, I think, but we'll see what happens. Today, we are pleased to be joined by a special guest. It's our first special guest of this season. He's been wanting to be on our podcast for years now. He's actually someone I know very well, but pleased to welcome in Coach Jacob Jarreau. Coach, how are you?
Thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, just for the audience's perspective, me and Jarreau go way back. We worked together in Wisconsin when I was the announcer for the Loggers. He was the assistant coach, the hitting coach for the Loggers, also first base coach, and worked with the infielders as well. So I've known him for a few years, and now he's coaching with the University of Southwest out in New Mexico, as well as assistant sports director. So gearing up for the fall season, just like we are in similar aspects. So today we wanted to kind of redo our predictions from last episode. Cory thinks it's because I wanted to switch my picks because of the Nats, which might be partially true, but we'll see where it goes with us. But before we get to our predictions, wanted to talk briefly about the news that has broken out today, the fact that 15 personnel, players and coaches for the Marlins tested positive. So as a result, the Marlins-Orioles game has been postponed, and the Yankees and Phillies game has also been postponed since the Marlins were in Philadelphia. They're actually, I still believe, quarantining in Philadelphia. So, Jarreau, you're the special guest. We'll start with you first. What's your thoughts on everything going on, especially because, you've coached a team from a coach's perspective?
I think the difficult part and what I've just been seeing on Twitter is just the MLB's lack to do more of a bubble structure. The MLS has had success. The NBA has had, success, although their season hasn't started. I think it's just hard, and even from a college coach's perspective of, we have this time with these guys at the field, and once these games are over, especially for these big leaguers, who knows what they're doing outside of this. I think we all could have our own opinions. I think, hey, if you're getting paid $15 million a year, you should just go to the field and go to your apartment and come back. And, if it's something that you're really passionate about, there shouldn't be any issues. But I think that's just a major problem when you're not in the bubble is you don't know what those guys are doing for the other 20 hours of the day, especially pitchers who, sometimes if you're a starter, you're only at the ballpark for a couple hours a day besides on your start day. And, it's just the uncertainty and, it's a tough situation. It couldn't have happened at a worse time because of it's the first 3 games of the season. And I think everyone was so excited for baseball to get back. And then we get a bombshell this morning, which is going to make things a little bit more difficult. And maybe it'll expose the MLB and maybe they have to rethink their protocol and their procedures and how they're doing things. And maybe it was a blessing in disguise in a way.
Yeah, Cory, I think we probably expected this in some form or fashion at some point this season. It's unfortunate that it happened so early, but what are your thoughts on what's been going on? Of course, 2 games now essentially concerning 4 teams have now been canceled for today.
Yeah, and it really is, like you kind of mentioned, something that I think we all knew would be a possibility. We all knew it would be something that could potentially happen. But now that it's like it actually is happening, it kind of makes you wake up a little bit like, wow, this is serious now. And we're seeing, that, like Jacob mentioned, they're not being in the bubble, how, you can't contain these guys. You can't monitor, what they're doing 24/7. And the bubbles have, been proven effective. I think, like you mentioned, the MLS, the NBA, and the NHL all have 0 cases right now in the recent tests that they've done. So they've proven to be effective. But like we've said, it's just not really the most realistic thing going on right now with MLB. I don't know if you can even, require that halfway through the season to go into a bubble. So we'll just have to kind of wait it out and see how it goes. I do think, we may be a little fortunate that this happened right now and not, towards the end of the season, right when playoffs are winding around and stuff like that. So they still do have time to figure this out, to figure out what the next, kind of course of action is, where they might go from here. Yeah, it definitely is concerning as a fan after, all this excitement that we've had this past week of it being, built up in baseball, being back, for it to suddenly, come to a halt like this for those four teams. You just kind of have to hope right now that it just stops right there and that it doesn't, continue to be a problem that we come across throughout the league.
This is one question I was wondering for both of you guys. Do you think a bubble would have been possible? I mean, Jarreau, you've coached a team, you've traveled with a team, obviously on a much lesser scale. But, I mean, baseball, you've got more personnel, more people to worry about. I know the original suggestion of it being in Arizona. I mean, it's 115 degrees in the Phoenix, Arizona area weather. I mean, do you think it would have been possible to potentially pull off a bubble?
I think it's difficult just in the fact that you said, there's a lot of people. I think just baseball is a different sport. I mean, you see the NBA, it's kind of cool how they had all the courts there together. You can't exactly put 15 individual baseball stadiums right next to each other. Even if you look at spring training parks, those side facilities that they use for the lower level guys, is the MLB even going to want to hold games on those fields where there's not the glitz and the glamour of an actual stadium? Just think about an idea of just pick one team in each division to host the whole season. You're obviously gonna have to redo the structures, but geographically, I think that's the best way. I know they tried to limit the travel as best they could with keeping teams in the, AL East plays AL East and NL East and keeping it geographic. But that was my first concern, is if these dudes are going to be hopping on planes and traveling, that's a hurdle just in itself. Then you're worried about airline staff and getting from the airport to the hotel and the hotel to the field. I think you're just trying to limit as much as you can. And it seems like it's working in the other sports when the guys just have to walk from a hotel to a park with 2 miles away or get on a golf cart. Obviously those are decisions made for the people up top, but I think they're kind of in a tough spot right now with already starting and it kind of failed in a way.
Cory, absent this tough news, what were your reflections on the first weekend? I mean, certainly exciting opening night, seeing the Nats and Yankees. I know Jarreau's a Yankees fan, and unfortunately got rained out. But absent that, I mean, a pretty good opening weekend. We had 15 games on the calendar, Saturday and Sunday. What were your thoughts on overall impressions on the first weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I think you saw that, even, each team has played 3 games so far and no team is undefeated. You look at kind of the parity of the league right now, and you can say, oh, the Dodgers and the Yankees are still going to be these top teams, but Dodgers lost 2 times to my Giants, who the Giants are going to be bad this year. So it still shows that anything can happen in baseball from day to day basis. The Orioles are 2-1. Who would have expected that after the first weekend? So I think it just goes to show you that anything happens in baseball just like we've always expected. And, we had talked about it kind of last week for our predictions, how there's probably going to be some random team that comes out of nowhere that neither of us are talking about that'll make a run and, with a 60-game season, sneak into the playoffs. So I think, that certainly is what I'm kind of monitoring, who will be that surprise team this year, who will be that team that, we all kind of trashed at the beginning of the year and ends up being a team that makes a run. So, but I mean, just in general too, it's just nice to be back, to be watching, some of these studs out there, to be watching, these guys that are just hitting absolute tanks. Stanton, some of those bombs that he hit, it's like, geez, just watching that again, it kind of makes the hair kind of like stand up on the back of your neck. So it was good to be back, watching baseball, watching America's pastime. And like we said, hopefully this isn't the end, but really just a little misstep along the way for the rest of the season.
Jarreau, was there one rule that you really liked, a new rule that's been implemented for the season that you've either really liked or really disliked? For me, I really love the DH rule. I mean, I love seeing teams being able to put an extra hitter in there. I think someone said the stat where it's like in the last postseason of all, like I think it was like 60 at-bats by pitcher, they only had 1 hit. So I think this is good for the game to be able to have a DH, an extra hitter in there. A lot of these pitchers like a Garrett Cole or Max Scherzer, where you have long-term investments in them, you don't want them to risk getting hurt. I know those guys like to hit, but I think this is a good move for baseball. What about you, Jarreau? Any rule that you like either passionately or really did not like? What were your thoughts on that?
I mean, being a hitting guy, I love the DH thing, just getting an extra bat in the lineup. It's going to make things more fun. I mean, you guys both being National League fans, you knew once that 9-hitter came up, it was almost a guaranteed out or a sac bunt, which is, it's not sexy. And I think baseball's in that weird time right now where, they're the only sport on. They can take advantage of this. Chicks dig the long ball, all that stuff of the offensive numbers that's the exciting stuff. That's what people want to watch is as much as good pitching matchups are. People tune in to watch homers. People tune in to watch Stanton hit 480-foot homers off the Nationals. Something I'm not a huge fan of is the extra inning rule. Growing up, we called it the Texas tiebreaker, putting the guy on second base. To me, it's like I said, it's a little league rule. It just, I don't know, it takes the strategy out of things. It takes the beauty out of baseball. I mean, you saw the Royals do it. They put a bunt down and they got a base hit and they ended up winning. When baseball is much more difficult than that. And I think if they're trying to speed up the game and make it that way, I think the game's already speeding up. They're not allowed to throw the ball around. There's, limited, fan stuff on the field. And I think that was kind of an unnecessary rule. I understand if there's ever a year to try it, this is definitely the year to try these wacky rules that they're able to do. It's just a 60-game season. Some people are thinking of it as a wash. So that's just one that just didn't sit well with me being a pure baseball fan.
Cory, I know you differ. So what are your thoughts on kind of the implementation of the rules so far? If I'm not mistaken, either of you guys can correct me. I'm not sure that I think every extra inning game, I don't think it went past the 10th inning, or it might have been the 11th inning. So it's wrapped up pretty quick. But what's your thoughts, Cory, on seeing the rule in action so far in the MLB?
Yeah, I mean, it is obviously kind of weird, seeing MLB extra innings starting with a runner on second and stuff like that. Because, I mean, you're used to, expecting to, like Jarreau was saying, you have to really kind of manufacture these runs and stuff like that. And now, like he said, you can just lay down a bunt and then a sac fly and you've got your run. And that's all you really need sometimes. So, I mean, we even saw it that second night where it wasn't even needed, where Matt Olson hit the bomb, the grand slam in extra innings. And that was kind of an awkward call by Carl Ravitch, not really knowing how to react with no fans for a walk-off grand slam and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's something that I'll still continue to monitor as the season goes. And it was super weird too, being, a National League fan and watching my Giants on opening night. And, you come to the end of the lineup and you're like, all right, you're kind of even thinking in your mind still like, oh, you got a free out kind of at the end of this inning. Then you come around and that's not the case anymore. Like you're thinking, oh, Johnny Cueto is going to bat like this inning. So I know that's one out, but that's, like I said, you're not seeing that anymore. So I think I was kind of torn on that at first, just because I did like the uncertainty sometimes of seeing a guy like Mad Bum going up there and him wanting to hit all the time and whatnot. But I think it will be good for the game, and in a wacky year like this, having all 9 guys hit that can, are being paid to be professional hitters.
As I mentioned earlier in the podcast, we decided to redo our predictions for the playoffs because we had the first day of the season. The MLB players agreed on a proposal from the owners on a unique postseason format, and so we're gonna redo our predictions. I'm imagining there's not going to be too many changes, but I think it'll be interesting. See, Jarreau, do you want to explain the new format to us? Because we were talking before, and it seems like you have it pretty nailed down.
Yeah, so it seems like you'll still get the 3 traditional the division winners, so an East, a West, a Central, and then they're going to take the second place team in each of those divisions, so a second place in the East, West, and the Central, and then they're going to take the final 2 wild cards. So it would probably most likely be the third place team in a division, kind of how they already do it, just stacking all the teams in order. And then it'll go 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7, 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5. And in that first round, the higher seeds, so the 1, 2, 3, and 4 seeds are going to have the whole series at home. So it'll be a 3-game series at home, and then it'll move to a traditional 5-game divisional and a 7-game championship series before the World Series.
All right, so there's the explanation of the format there. Cory, let's start with you. Let's give me your 3 division winners first in the American League.
In the American League, I think I'm going to stick with the same division winners, at least, that I had. So I had the Rays actually as my AL East division winner. I had the Twins as my AL Central, and the Astros still as my AL West. So I'm going to stick with those three.
All right, J-Ro, we haven't heard your predictions at all. So what's your predictions for the division champs? And feel free to give us a little explanation if necessary.
I'm going to go with Yankees, Houston, and the Twins in these spots. I think they're just clearly the most talented teams just on paper, and I think kind of just the general census of picks. I think things are going to get wackier, these second plays and the wild card picks. So
I agree with J-Ro 2 out of 3. I'm going with the Yankees, Twins, and I will still go with the Astros. I know we all know that Justin Verlander's out for the season, or at least an extended amount of time. So that's a tough blow to a team that already lost Garrett Cole last offseason. But I still think talent-wise, they're probably still the best in that division, even without Verlander. So I will stick with the Astros. So I guess 3 out of 3, because I did kind of debate on another team in there. All right, so give me your wild cards. I think this is going to get wacky, as J-Ro said. So, Corey, who are your 5 wild card teams?
So the second place in each division, I'm going to go Yankees in the AL East. I'm going to go White Sox, actually, as a second in the AL Central. And then this is where I was kind of debating. I had picked the Angels last week as one of the wild cards, so I'll stick with them as the second place winner in the AL West. And then 2 more wild cards on top of that. I'm going to do the Oakland Athletics. And then for our last one, I don't know. I'm torn between the Indians, who I think is the safer choice, and the Blue Jays, who I think have all the young talent in the world. It's just a matter of them kind of putting it together and getting good pitching. So I want to say the Blue Jays, but I'm going to go with the safer pick, the Indians, as my last one.
All right, and we're going to have to keep track of who we pick, because I think it's going to get messy here. J-Ro, who are your 5 wild card teams?
out of the East will go the Rays. The West will be Oakland. The Central will be the Indians. And then my 2 wild card teams are going to be the White Sox and the Angels. I think the Angels might make a little push there if Rendon gets healthy and comes back in the middle of the season. That would be a nice bat to alleviate Mike Trout carrying the team like he has been doing the last couple of years.
All right, and I think we actually have a lot of agreement, because I'm with you guys. I've got Oakland as my second place team in the West. I've got the Rays as my second place team in the East. And then in the Central, I have the Indians. And then my 2 other wild card teams are the Angels and the White Sox. So really a lot of agreement between the 3 of us. For either of you guys, J-Ro, I'll go with you first. Any one of those wild card teams you think, man, they could really make a run at potentially winning it all?
I think the Rays, I grew up in Tampa and I understand the money struggles, but, they're so young, but they're just a really fun team. I mean, they win 95-plus games last year, and, they were overshadowed by the Yankees. They're a really fun team. They have some incredible pitchers, and I kind of mentioned earlier, another team that maybe, I don't know. I just have this hunch about the Angels. It's kind of my thought process of these old teams versus these veteran teams. These young teams, I have a feeling are going to come off to a really hot start, kind of like you mentioned the Blue Jays. They're so young, but are they going to be able to, sustain that through a whole year? Where I think a veteran team like the Angels or the Nationals or the Cardinals, they have these guys that have been doing it for multiple years and are going to be able to, understand the length of the season and kind of kick their bodies into gear when they need to, kind of have a switch in a way.
All right, Corey, how about you? A sneaky team that could emerge from that list?
Based upon my picks last time, I'm going to agree with J-Ro and the Rays, of course. But I think another team, too, I was watching some of them this weekend, too, is just the A's, I think, and what they have there with even 2 guys that are, I think, top 5. I think they were both top 5 MVP candidates last year with Simeon and Chapman. So 2 guys in the middle of their lineup like that. Matt Olson, of course, had the walk-off grand slam. And I think that team has a lot of guys that we hardly hear about who are just consistent day in and day out. They didn't really get a whole lot from their starting pitching, so that'll kind of be the big thing moving forward. I think Sean Manaea only threw like 3 or 4 innings. So I think if the A's can get some of their pitching together, I think they certainly have a lineup that can make some noise come the end of the season.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to go with the two teams that have, I think, the two best managers in baseball, the Angels and the Indians, Joe Madden and Terry Francona. I mean, the Indians have been pretty much right there for the last 4 or 5 years, haven't been able to get over the hump, I think, in a 60-game season. Like Jarreau mentioned, that veteran leadership could maybe propel them to make a deep run. And then I think the Angels probably have the I think a lot of people are watching them to see what they can do in their first year. I think a lot of people usually say, well, your first year with a new team, a new manager, even as one as Joe Madden, it takes them a while to get adjusted. But I think in a 60-game season, who knows, they could make a run. So again, a lot of agreement between the three of us on who's going to make the playoffs. I didn't keep track of everybody, but I wild card, it seemed like we had almost unanimous agreement in terms of the collection of teams that were going to make the playoffs. Let's go to the National League. I'm interested to hear this one because I think we might have some more variety here potentially. But J-Roll, I'll start with you. Who are your three division winners?
I'm going to go Braves out of the East. That was a shellacking last night. I think that, I mean, Acuna, he's leading the league in strikeouts. He's not even getting going yet. I think their offense is just so fun. And they have some young pitchers that are going to be able to help them out. In the West, I think if you don't pick the Dodgers, you're crazy, especially when you have that much payroll on the field at once. I think the big thing for them is just going to be starters and bullpen down the road. I mean, I know it's middle of July, so that's about the time Kershaw got hurt, and he got hurt right on schedule, missing the opening day start. And then out of the Central, I'm going to go with the Cardinals. Kind of like I mentioned earlier, the veteran presence. I think they got a lot of old guys that just know how to play the game. Obviously, manager of the year last year, and a team that they just play the game the right way, the Cardinal way. I think that Central is just going to be such a flip of the coin. It's going to be interesting. It's going to come down to the last week of the season, I would say, for all those teams, which I think is going to bring up another point of you could have a potential with the short amount of games to have 3 or 4 divisions that are tied at the end of the year, which we haven't had in the past decade or so.
Corey, who you got as your 3 division champs?
I'm going to stick with my same 3 as last week, the Braves. My surprise pick, the Reds in the Central, and then the Dodgers, of course, in the NL West. And, even it was just kind of even unfair. You see Kershaw, he gets hurt, and then they just throw in Dustin May, a guy who's throwing 99-mile-per-hour sinkers and 92-mile-per-hour sliders. It's like such a luxury. When you're a team like that, you can just throw that guy in on a scratch start. So, like Jarreau said, you'd be hard pressed to pick against the Dodgers, even if they haven't gotten off to the hottest start so far.
I've got the Dodgers winning the NL West, the Cardinals winning the NL Central, and I'm sticking with the Washington Nationals winning the NL East. I'm not saying it's gonna be a hard season because they don't have Juan Soto for at least I'm guessing at least 2 weeks, but I think they've got enough pitching to win the division. Although, as J-Ro knows, that offense, except for Saturday night, was pretty anemic for the weekend. So I'm sticking with the Nats, but I acknowledge it's going to be a tough road for success this season.
The offense is too old. It's going to take them too long to get their bodies warmed up.
We'll see. I can't really deny that right now. But how about the wild cards, J-Ro? I think this is going to be – I think we could see a lot of variation in this between the three of us.
I'm going to go now. Your Nationals in the East. When you have Scherzer starting every 5th day, there's a win at least every 5 days. Out of the Central, I'm going to go Milwaukee. And out of the West, I'm going to go the San Diego Padres. I think they're just a really fun young team. Just loaded offensively in the infield, and they have one of the best bullpens in baseball. So we'll see what they can do, with these 60 games and all of them meaning more. I think the teams with the stronger and the deeper bullpens are going to end up kind of propelling themselves towards the top near the end of the season. All
right. Corey, who are your wild card teams?
So just the second place in division so far. I'm going to do the Nationals as well. I think they'll get it together, and their pitching will carry them a little bit. Central, I'm going to go with the Cardinals. Both you guys picked them to win the division. And then NL West, I'm going to go Padres as well. And like Jarreau mentioned, with just the young talent they have, and Tatis commanding the middle there at shortstop. I love watching him play. So those are the 3 at least second place teams that I'll take.
All right. For me, I'm going to go with the Atlanta Braves. They had that big comeback, the other night, down 7 runs in the 8th inning. Their offense is potent, so I'm going with the Braves as my second-place NL East team. The West, I agree with both you guys. The Padres, I think, have got a lot of young talent, especially with Fernando Tatis and Manny Machado in the heart of that lineup. And then the Central, I'm going to go with a surprise team, the Chicago Cubs. Actually, I did pick them to make the playoffs last time, but I think David Ross is going to – I think he's a dark horse manager of the year candidate. They've got a lot of the same talent that won the World Series around, so I'm going with the Cubs. Morgan DePew, a guy who coached with me and Jarreau, is a big Cubs fan, so he'll be happy to hear that. But I'm going with the Cubs as my second-place team. And then, Jarreau, who do you have for your final 2 wild card spots?
I'm going to go with the Reds and the Cubs, so make it 4 teams out of the Central, which would be very unique. I think the Reds they put a lot of money in this offseason. They got some fun pitchers to watch, Amir Garrett, Trevor Bauer. Bauer pitched really well yesterday. So I think they're going to be a fun team to watch. They might be the team that's a little overhyped, kind of a team that they're dark horse, but I think everyone's picking them. But, I think they'll have a chance to make a run at the end of the season.
Cory, how about your final 2 wild card teams?
I'm going to go with the Mets, who I also had picked last week as a wild card team. So I go with the Mets, obviously, blowing that second game of the series of Diaz, blowing the save, and then getting shellacked last night. Doesn't have the greatest look, but I still think, when you have a guy like DeGrom still leading that rotation and the bats that they do have in that lineup with Alonso and with Cespedes, I think they'll get it together. And then my last team, I'll pick the Brewers. I think, they went 1-2 this week, and the Cubs won that series against them. But I think in the long run, the Brewers will be the better team between those two. Those are kind of the 2 I was deciding between for that last spot.
I've got a hot take for you guys. Well, my first team I'm going to agree with you is the Cincinnati Reds. I know that's been a team that has been well talked about here. I'm going with the Reds. And then my final wild card team, I'm going to go with the Philadelphia Phillies. I know that's a little bit of a hot take because I'm not sure. And I actually did have the Mets last week. But I just think with Joe Girardi in there, we talked about with Joe Madden and Terry Francona, you like that veteran leader with your manager. And I just think it's kind of now or never. They signed Zach Wheeler. I think in a 60-game season, they've I'm not saying they're the Yankees, but I think they've got the talent on the field to, if they get going, they'll be a tough lineup to face with Bryce Harper and those guys. So I will pick the Phillies as my final wild card team. So we've pretty much picked all the teams that we think will make the playoffs. So, Jarreau, I'll go to you first. Who do you think will face off in the ALCS, and who will ultimately make it to the World Series?
I'm going to be a homer here and pick my Yankees. But I'd probably have it with the Astros, just the 2 most talented teams on paper. It would make for a very interesting trilogy, especially with all the stuff that's come out in the offseason about the Astros. I think that's what people would want to see. I think it would also be interesting to have a Yankees-Rays. I don't know how the seeding would work, how that could happen, but I think just the 2 top teams would be the Yankees and the Astros, with the Yankees making it to the World Series.
Yeah, of course, all of these predictions, it always depends on seeding. So we might see a potential matchup earlier than the championship series. Cory, how about you?
Yeah, I am going to do that. The Yankees-Rays battling it out in the ALCS, where I guess the way that would work out is you have, the Yankees or the Rays, whichever one you don't have winning the division, being in that 4 or 5 matchup, and then the other one, the Yankees, I guess, or in my scenario, the Rays being a 2 or 3 seed, so then they can meet up in that at ALCS. So that's what I'm going to do. That's what I had last week as well, was the Rays and the Yankees in the ALCS, with the Tampa Bay Rays, my hot team, my sleeper team, making it to the World Series. Like I said, just love their rotation. I think, the 3 maybe best guys of any team, and with their rotation with Morton, Snell, and Glasnow. And Glasnow hasn't even pitched yet. They had Yarbrough pitch the other night. So I think the way they've done it, the way they're set up, is they're not going to have any flashy names, anything like that in their lineup that it's going to produce. That's what I'm going to see them doing. In a wild year, the Rays go into the World Series out of the AL.
I agree with you. The Yankees will make the ALCS, and I will be sticking with the Astros. Like I said, it's a tough loss for Verlander, but I just think they have the experience. And again, they have Dusty Baker. Sticking on the theme of veteran managers, I think he's on a mission to win his first World Series, and I think the Astros will make it back to the ALCS. despite no Verlander, and I will be going with the New York Yankees to advance the World Series. I mean, I just saw their team this past weekend. I mean, they just have a tough lineup. Gleyber Torres, Giancarlo Stanton, Aaron Judge, Luke Voigt. I mean, just it is top to bottom. I mean, it's a tough. Gleyber Torres loves to torture the Orioles. If you've seen those Gary Thorne highlights, roasting the Orioles for pitching to him, but hard to beat their lineup. And I think they have the most to lose this year. I think they might be it's either them or the Dodgers that are the betting favorite. So I'm going with the Yankees. Jarreau's going with the Yankees. Corey has the Yankees in the ALCS, but he'll pick the Rays in an upset. So the Yankees, all of us agree, are the American League representative. Jarreau, who will face off in the NLCS and who will ultimately make it to the World Series?
The first team I'll pick would be the Braves. Just that young offense and some really good young pitchers in a short season might be able to extend them and kind of let them go a little bit. Facing off against the Dodgers, with the Dodgers going to the World Series, I think if the Dodgers aren't in that NLCS or aren't in that World Series, it might be the end of the Dave Roberts era. When you put that much money on the field and you're not able to produce at least one championship. I know they've been close a couple times, but money talks, and if you're going to pay someone to get a job done like that, he needs to get it done. So got the Dodgers facing off with the Yankees in the World Series.
Corey, how about yourself?
I also see, Billy, you were quick to can your pick of the Astros returning to the World Series, correct?
Yeah, I did pick the Astros last time, but I think no Verlander against the Yankees. That's gonna be tough. They might be able to scoop by to the ALCS, but I think against that Yankee lineup, it's hard. I saw him this weekend, man. Some of those balls Giancarlo hit. I'm like, dang, he's gonna destroy pitching. But how about you, Corey? Who do you have? You gonna switch your team? Are you gonna stick with it, or what are you thinking?
I'm gonna stay the same. It was what Jarreau just picked right there. The Braves and the Dodgers battling it out. I think we've come away looking at this weekend. They do look like the two top teams in the NL. So I'm gonna stick with that and stick with the Dodgers advancing to that World Series. Like you said, I think them and the Yankees were tied for the betting favorites to win the World Series when the season began. So I think, and don't obviously have the Yankees going there, but the Rays and the Dodgers meeting in the World Series like I talked about last week.
I agree with you guys. I'm going to take the Dodgers as one of the teams that will be participating in NLCS. And I hate to do this, but after a lot of consideration, I'm going to pick the Braves to make it to the NLCS. I just thought about it, and I was like, the Nats, they had an incredible run last year, but no Juan Soto. Jarreau saw, and I'm sure, Corey, you follow along. Those two games, and maybe I'm just overreacting, but their offense without Juan Soto was it's a big bat to miss in the lineup. And I'm like, I hope I'm wrong. I hope the Nats make it to the World Series, but I just think without his bat, and even when he comes back, he's gonna have, it's gonna be an adjustment period. It's not like he's just gonna come back and start hitting 300. I just against teams like the Braves and the Dodgers, the Nats barely beat the Dodgers last year, and I think it's gonna be hard 2 years in a row to put it up to repeat luck. So I'm going with the Braves instead of the Nats to make it to the NLCS, and I'll pick the Dodgers to face off against the Yankees. So I think that's what me and Jarreau had the same World Series, and Corey, you had the same group of teams in the end, but you're sticking with the Rays and Dodgers. So Jarreau, I'd be shocked if I didn't hear you pick a team, but I'll let you go ahead and pick your team. Who do you think is going to win?
I think the World Series champion will be the greatest sports franchise ever assembled is the New York Yankees.
Okay. Corey?
I also want to point out this is our third year doing MLB predictions, and this is the first time that Billy has now not taken the Nats to win it all. So what a surprising move there. I thought I had texted you in jest the other day that you were going to have to change your pick, and it looks like you actually followed through on that. So for one time, Billy was not taking the homer move and picking the Nats. So just wanted to point that out to the audience. But I am going to take and stick true to my guns like I did last week with the Tampa Bay Rays winning the World Series, coming out of nowhere, being the team no one really expects. And they just put it all together in a wild and wacky and zany 2020 season. I think we're going to have a wild year like I talked about with weird teams kind of coming out of nowhere. And, the Rays aren't necessarily a weird team, like you mentioned, winning 95 games last year, but I think they're kind of underrated a little bit, and we'll put it all together in what I think is going to be, like I said, a year where something unexpected happens. And wouldn't that be the most unexpected of it all, the Tampa Bay Rays winning the World Series? So that's what I'll go with.
I'm going to go with the Los Angeles Dodgers to win the World Series. Part of this is I wanted to get back. I would love for 2 years in a row for Cory to see the Nats win and have to deal with that, and then see the Dodgers win and have to deal with that as a Giants fan. So part of that is because of that, but I just think also, like you mentioned, Jarreau, it's Dave Roberts. I think he's under a lot of pressure to win this year. And Aaron Boone, I mean, he's been there now for a couple of years. They haven't been able to get over the promised land either. So I think it would be really interesting. But I would just love to see that World Series. I mean, LA, New York. I think they've also faced off like 11 times in the World Series. I might be wrong on that, on the exact number. I know it's been a good amount of time. So, but I just think the Dodgers might have the best outfield duo in the whole game with Cody Bellinger and Mookie Betts now. Although his contract, I think, is something else we could discuss. But I'm going with the Dodgers because I want to see Cory have to deal with the Nats last year and the Dodgers this year winning it all. That would be hilarious to see him deal with that. So, I think you recap our predictions. I think we had a lot of the same teams and, pretty much the same group of teams in the end. But I think we are expecting the Dodgers and the Yankees, of course, the betting favorites, to be there at the end like the most people are. So with that, let's again look at our individual awards. Jarreau, who do you think is going to win the American League MVP this year?
I'm going to be a homer again, and I'm going to choose Aaron Judge. I know the stats, obviously, no homers on the weekend, but he squared up a lot of baseballs, and just being a baseball guy, knowing that's the toughest part earlier in the season. He was getting barrel to ball. It may not have been going his way, falling where he wanted him to, but I think he's poised for a big year. I think with the whole Astros scandal last year, I think he's got a little chip on his shoulder. And, for my Yankee fandom, I hope he comes out and hits 20 bombs in 60 games and hits 310 and drives in a bunch of runs. And I think he's in a good position hitting 2 with all that protection behind him. He's going to get pitches to hit. Like Cory kind of said earlier, it's a tough lineup, and no one wants to face any of those guys.
So you would take Judge over Stanton, or really any of those big-time Yankee hitters?
I would. I've seen Stan strike out way too many times. Obviously, he had a great opening, series. The health is a concern, and just, Judge, he's an everyday player. He's just more of an all-around baseball player. I'm gonna go with Judge this year.
Cory, how about your American League MVP?
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with the non-sexy pick of Mike Trout. He just does it day in and day out, and saw his first bomb yesterday. So, he's not a really out there pick, really, the betting favorite in the AL, but I think, he's the best player that we've ever seen play. So I'm going to pick Mike Trout.
I agree with Cory. I initially said Anthony Rendon last week, but because he's been hurt, I'll go with a safe pick in Mike Trout. And I think all of us can agree. We just want to see the Angels have some level of playoff success with Mike Trout. I mean, really feel like they're wasting away the best years of his career, and it's a good thing they brought in Joe Madden. So we'll see if they can reverse that trend this season. National League MVP. Jarreau, you have a prediction for that?
I do. I'm going to go with Christian Yelich. I thought he had a really good year last year. Obviously, the kneecap injury kind of stunned him at the end. I thought he had a chance to beat out Bellinger there. You never know with another 15 games. The dude could have just gone on a tear and taken that MVP. And he's just a really fun player to watch. So I'm going to go with Christian Yelich.
Cory?
I don't know, so last week I kind of did a surprise pick, did Pete Alonso, hoping he would break out right away, and I see he's hitting 091 right now. So it's like, do I really want to stick with him? It is only 3 games. And if you were to pick a guy right now, Dansby Swanson, just the way he started the season, would be the guy, but I don't think he's, of course, going to keep that going. So I don't know. I'm kind of hard pressed here. I think the safe pick is going to be Bellinger. So we'll put that down on paper, but I'm not going to count out Alonso yet. I don't know if that's cheating to kind of put 2 guys in there. But I'll say this: I'll stick with Alonso, but I reserve the right to change that pick next week's podcast if he hasn't, brought it up and hit a couple bombs or two.
I'm going with Bellinger. Like you mentioned, I think he's one of the best outfielders in the game. Really, him and Yelich seem to go for the MVP award these past couple of years in the NL. So I'm going with Cody Bellinger, Cy Young in the American League. Jarreau, you've got a Cy Young prediction?
In the American League, I'm going to go Garrett Cole. Just with the short year, I think it's just going to be purely based on strikeouts, which is kind of how I chose my guy. So I'm going to have to go with Garrett Cole. Probably going to be higher up in the strikeout numbers. Low, dark horse, and obviously he just pitched really well the other day. But Shane Bieber, 14 Ks. I think it's honestly just going to be whoever strikes out the most guys. But I do have a hot take. I know, Billy, you're the hot take guy. But I was thinking about it is why couldn't the closer win it this year? If a closer, has 25 saves through 60 games, I mean, that's an incredible pace. I looked it up. Frankie Rodriguez, 62 saves in one season. He had a save every 2.6 games. So that would put you at 26 games over 60. If someone could get over to that 26 to 30 mark in saves, that would be intriguing. I'm not sure who that could be. It obviously have to be a team who's going to win a lot, but that could be interesting, especially with how games are going to have to be managed. They're going to be a little tighter. The closers are going to be that much more important, winning 1- and 2-run ball games down the stretch.
And they're going to have to be used a lot more as well in 60 games. That's interesting. I didn't really think about it like that. Corey, how about you for your AL Cy Young?
I think I picked Garrett Cole last week, and I think he's the guy where, it was only 5 innings with being a short game, but he still looked dominant in those 5 innings. Just the one mistake to Adam Eaton was the only hit I believe that he gave up. So I'm going to go with Garrett Cole as well.
I said Blake Snell last week, but I'm going to go with Garrett Cole this week because he just has the offense behind him. I don't think he's really going to struggle for run support. I think he's going to get a pretty good dose of that from the Yankee offense. And with his strikeout numbers, I think he's in the best position to succeed to win the American League Cy Young. So I'm going Garrett Cole as well. So a unanimous agreement on the AL Cy Young Award. How about the NL Cy Young Award? Jarreau?
I'm going to go with your boy and logger legend, Max Scherzer, kind of with my same theory of who's going to strike out the most. Scherzer, I don't know if anyone watched that game on Thursday, but they put up his strikeout totals and his swing and miss ratios, and it's just stupid what the dude can do with a baseball. And he made the Yankees dominant lineup, although he gave up 4 runs. He made them look stupid there through 5 innings with 10 Ks. So, he's a strikeout horse, and he's just going to work. And, you already know he doesn't like getting taken out of the game. So the more chances and the more innings he has, the more strikeouts he's going to rack up. And, I think those strikeout numbers are going to be pretty high for a 60-game season for a starter.
I'm going with Max Scherzer. I'm going to just be up front. I'm going with Max Scherzer. So, Corey, are you going to hate and pick someone else other than Max Scherzer?
Of course I'm going to pick someone other than Max Scherzer. I mean, last week I was really high on some young arms, and I ended up going with Walker Buehler, but he, of course, hasn't even started yet. They've been slowly kind of working him back in after he missed some time. So I don't know if I'm going to go with him, but I'll go with another young guy instead of Jack Flaherty with St. Louis Cardinals, and just think, he had a win over the weekend, pitched 7 strong innings. I think he's a guy that, was perhaps maybe the most dominant hitter in the second half or most dominant pitcher in the second half of the season last year. I think he had under like a 1.15 ERA in the second half. So I think him with a team like the Cardinals, who will definitely be in contention, I think come the end of the year, he's really the workhorse of that staff now. Adam Wainwright has always kind of been the guy there, but I think Flaherty has now established himself as the ace of that staff. So I'm going to pick go ahead and make him my pick instead of Walker Buehler like I did last week.
All right. How about manager of the year, Jarreau?
This one was tough for me. In a 60-game season, there's only so much you're going to be able to do, but I kind of wanted to go with someone off the radar maybe. I chose Rick Renteria with the White Sox. They're just a really fun team, really young. They put some money into the organization this year, and they might be able to make a little bit of a run. I put them as my last wild card team, so we'll see. Maybe they can sneak up and overcome the Indians in that division. But I think they're just a really fun team to watch, and it'll be interesting with those young arms they have mixed with kind of the veteran presence as well.
Corey, I know you're a big fan of Tim Anderson's, but who's your pick for manager of the year?
Yeah, I love Tim Anderson. But manager of the year, I'm going to go with who I picked last week, and I think, obviously with me having the Rays winning the AL East, it would kind of be hard-pressed not to pick Kevin Cash as manager of the year and just what he's going to do, what I predict he's going to do with that team, and just the lack of, perceived talent that they might have there, and him winning that division potentially. I think you couldn't not give the award to him if that ends up being the case. So I'll go with Mr. Cash from the Rays.
I'm going to stick with my initial pick from last week, Joe Madden. I think if the Angels can make the playoffs, he's going to have a good case. And again, he's working with a great duo in Rendon and Trout once they get healthy. But I'll stick with Joe Madden. How about in the National League? I know it's going to change for me, but how about for you guys? Corey, who's your National League manager pick?
I'm going to stick with who I said last week, David Bell with the Reds, with a team that hasn't, since those days. What was it, back with like Brandon Phillips and Joey Votto was really kind of the stars of those lineups. Jay Bruce, guys like that, they haven't really been back to the postseason since then. So I think with them, in my predictions, making it back to the postseason and winning that division, I think the manager of the year would go to him in the NL. So I'm going to go with David Bell.
J-Ro?
I'm going to go Brian Snitker with the Braves. I thought he had a chance to win it last year too. And I think, if they can make a push and maybe push on the Dodgers to get to the World Series, that could just show his work as a manager of taking those young guys and bringing them to the next level, because they're there. They have the talent. It's just going to be trying to get those guys over the hump and trying to get them to grow up a little bit and be, big leaguers, completely.
And I'm going to stick with my pick of Davey Martinez because I think if they make the playoffs, even how bad their offense is right now, I think he will have done a good job. And Jarreau, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but I said last year that he got snubbed. He should have been the manager of the year. He was 19-31. He took the team to the playoffs. Even if you take out what happened in the World Series, I mean, he had a pretty impressive regular season. So I'm going with Davey Martinez. He will, get that award this season as to make up for not getting it last season. There's our major MLB picks. So, Jarreau, we asked this question last week. I'll pose it to you. Any dark horses you see out there for any of these awards, Cy Young, MVP, you think this guy could be?
I kind of mentioned the Cy Young as a closer. I think that would be interesting. I don't know the last time that a closer won the Cy Young. But, like we talked about, the bullpens are going to be used a little bit more heavily. I think a dark horse Cy Young in the NL might be Dustin May. After seeing him pitch the other day, he's going to have a huge role in there. Who knows when Kershaw is going to be back? The dude's filthy. Got a long orange hair, and he's throwing 100 miles an hour. And so it could be, Dustin May and Walker Buehler as two guys, fighting it out if Scherzer doesn't have a year like he usually does.
Corey, how about on the same vein J-Ro was talking about closer, how realistic do you think it could be to see a starting pitcher win the MVP? I mean, I think Verlander might have been the last guy to do that, 2011 or so. What do you think about that? Any chance you think a starting pitcher could win the MVP in a shortened season like this one?
I don't really think so, because even I think we've seen that they're not using the starters as long as they typically would go. I think you even saw, like I was mentioning, the Rays, none of their starters, I think, went longer than 4 or 5 innings. DeGrom only threw however many pitches it was, I think like 80-some pitches. Cueto only went 4 innings the other night. So you're even seeing these top-line starters that they're not using them and extending them kind of all the way. Even, it might just be because it's early in the start of this season. They don't want to overextend them too much. But I think it would be kind of difficult to see a starter win the MVP in this season.
I'm going to go with my dark horse manager of the year, David Ross. Now, I had him making the playoffs, so I think it's not the most crazy pick I've ever had. But I think it'll be interesting to see how he does because, people agree he's one of the nicest people in baseball. And he played with those guys, won a World Series with Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo. I just wonder how that dynamic is going to work. But I think if he can get it together, this team's got enough talent to where they can make a run in the postseason. So that's something I'm watching for, how David Ross ends up managing his first season. So good discussion on baseball. Of course, J-Ro, being a coach, he's got his plethora of baseball experience. Before we conclude, J-Ro, I just want to give you the floor. Do you have any hot takes or anything you just want to get off your chest about any sport that you wanted to share. Basketball, football, doesn't matter, baseball. Any hot takes you wanted to share before we close out?
I'm just really excited to see the NBA happen. I don't know if you guys saw the Lou Williams stuff over the weekend, him making an unexpected trip to an establishment in Atlanta. I'm just curious how that stuff's going to work. I mean, they've done a good job of it so far. And I've always said, I think those top 1 through 5 teams that have a chance at getting to the finals are going to, they're going to take it more seriously. I always joke like, hey, LeBron, if LeBron came up to Alex Caruso and said, you are not leaving your hotel room, I'm pretty sure Caruso is going to listen to him. Those guys that have that veteran leadership. I'm just worried that those 6, 7, 8, 9 teams in those conferences might ruin it for everyone else by, what are the Wizards doing there? I mean, I know they're a DC team, but they're not beating anybody. At what point do those dudes just say, screw it, and they're just going to avoid the bubble? And I think that would be the interesting. And now with the Marlins, obviously they have that 60-player pool, but you bring 15 of those guys up, and then you got to move things around. And what happens when an NBA team, when 4 of the guys, they only have 15-man rosters? What happens when 4 of them, test positive and you got to quarantine? I think that's the thing that MLB is unfortunately going to have to deal with at first. They're the first sport that's fully back and had a semi-outbreak. So they're kind of the guinea pigs. But I think if I was Roger Goodell in the NFL, I would be sweating a little bit right now, because I just don't see, with the prima donna-ness of those NFL players and their contracts, of them abiding by the rules, and they're all going to want to get paid up front. So I know the coronavirus is all that everyone's talking about, but there's people's families and contracts, and you can talk about, oh, this dude's making $15 million a year, but what about the 75th dude on the practice squad who really needs that paycheck to survive? I think that's where things are going to get a little dicey with the NFL, and I don't know. I'm just going to sit back and enjoy it and watch it, and only so much we can do as fans, but just watch and enjoy. So
You got a pick for who do you think is going to win the championship? NBA?
Well, growing up in Tampa, I was extremely excited with the Tom Brady signing this year. So I would predict Bucks Chiefs Super Bowl. Not just adding Brady, but they had Godwin and Mike Evans and a pretty solid defense. And I just don't see anybody beating the Chiefs. Maybe the Ravens, but I'd probably give it to the Chiefs to go back to back. That's just such a talented team, but. Shoot, you may not even have a season with the NFL with all they want and their money disputes and all that stuff. So we'll see. Chiefs are my virtual pick to win if you had to pick one right now.
And, Corey, we've got the NBA coming back. Lakers, Clippers off the bat. I mean, a good game. We could see him again in the Western Conference Finals in Orlando.
Yeah, we certainly could. And, obviously it's – so how many games are they playing before then? Is it like 8 games before?
Yeah, I think it's 8 games.
Yeah, 8 games before it goes into playoffs. So, I mean, it'll be even exciting too, just for those, those final teams battling for the last playoff seed, and to see, how that kind of shakes out at the end. So looking forward to all of that, and just, those true contenders, I guess. And once it comes to the playoff portion of the bubble. So really looking forward to NBA returning. Of course, this week it starts right on Friday. So, sports are, I guess, officially back now. We've been saying that for like 4 months, it seems like. Any kind of little thing arises that sports are back, but I think we can actually officially say that they're back now.
Jarreau, thank you so much for joining us. I know you wanted to be on the podcast for a long time, and with your sport, baseball, you're a coach, had an opportunity to give your predictions. So can't thank you enough for joining us.
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys. It was a lot of fun, and thanks for having me on.
For our special guest, Jacob Jarreau, and my partner, Corey Van Dyke, I'm Hot Take Billy Parvatam on hand. We thank you so much for joining us this week. Stay tuned for next time as sports continue to come back. Again, thank you for joining us on episode 2 of season 5 of Real Talk with Billy and Cory. We'll see you next time. Love you 3000.